I just started scraping the ground as loud as I could with my hands to make a little clearing to put my feet in, because I hadn't even done that yet. And I hit my grunt call twice, threw it on the ground, made another loud noise as loud as I could with the leaves, got my bow ready, and I could hear him coming. And he was grunting. And when he came out of the corn, his ears were like back, hair was up, and I knew he was coming.
Alright guys, I'm standing on my parents' driveway. It's a house back there, and I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of the story from the buck that my dad shot this past November. I think it was November 17th. Myself and my family thinks it's pretty cool because he shot it on this property, which is only like 4 or 5 acres. Just to set the scene a little bit here, we're out in open ag country in western Ohio. It's really flat out here. There's very little topography, and there's honestly very little deer habitat. For the most part, it's either field or small woodlots that are pretty open. Where there are woodlots, they're getting a ton of hunting pressure because that's the only place people have to hunt. Let's put it this way, one of my neighbors used to let me hunt when I was living in this area, and there was more pressure on that piece of private land than there is on any of the public land that I've hunted in any state. Tree stands everywhere, guys going out there all the time. So obviously these deer have to find any cover that they can and get kind of creative with the cover that they're using to survive. With that being said, there's still some pretty nice bucks that live in this area. They seem to still find ways to get old. There's not a ton of them. There's not a ton of deer in general, but every once in a while some will get old enough to get pretty big. So one of the things that we've noticed over the years, just by sitting in the house, watching the driveway here, is does tend to bed periodically in the little corner of the woods right here by the driveway. They are by no means consistent. They do not do it every day. I wouldn't say there's even a wind direction that they do it on. My theory on it is there's just so few bedding areas and so little browse because of the lack of timber that the deer just bounce around in bedding areas. That way they don't overuse one food source. So there's definitely does that come through this area, obviously leaving scent through here, so during the rut you get some buck action. So last year I was in the house in November. I was editing, had bought a bow tag because I was filming my buddy Ben on some public land. And I happened to look outside of the house and I noticed a small buck right here on the driveway. Immediately that caught my attention, and I could tell that he was looking into this patch of timber. I started glassing into the timber and I noticed a mature buck bedded right here in this little corner, right where the does typically bed. So immediately I knew that he had a doe in there. Bucks usually just don't bed right in there by themselves. Usually it's just during the rut. So grabbed a bow, ran into the woods, stalked him, got really close. Actually what ended up happening is some does came from across the road and kind of messed up the stalk. He was bedded perfect, was coming in on a crosswind, had all the confidence in the world, but a group of does came from a different woodlot across the road, middle of the day, totally random. I think they got that buck up. I think he wanted to push that hot doe away from the rest of the deer, and therefore all heck kind of broke loose, and because of that everything just kind of went crazy. He chased her through this little patch of timber, and he actually chased her right on top of me. I was actually the closest I've ever been to a mature buck. Unfortunately, I was in there editing, so I obviously didn't have anybody filming me, but it was pretty wild. And that really got us thinking about specific dates of when these bucks were gonna be in this timber. All right, so right now I'm looking at the driveway. You can see the house back in there. That day I could see that smaller buck and he was right there. He was kept looking into this corner of the timber, and that's where we consistently see the deer. So that encounter with the buck right here in this patch of woods is definitely not the first time that we've seen a big buck push a doe into there. We've obviously seen it over the years. It's not every year. I think it's honestly something that we don't always catch. A lot of times over the years we were at school or at work or whatever, and we just didn't see that buck doing that. But a lot of times, a lot of rubs pop up in this little patch of timber, but it's always right in the middle of the rut, right in the peak of the rut. That time frame where most people associate with the lockdown. That's what the bucks are doing. They're getting locked down with does in this little corner of the woods. So one of the interesting things that we did a couple years ago, I think it's probably been 4 years now, is we stopped mowing this driveway. For years, right here along the driveway, you can see there's tall grass. All that we used to mow. There were several years there that went by, didn't really grow much, but really this year it started to take off a lot. And some of the things that my parents have noticed since they've stopped mowing it is an increase in all wildlife. You might have just heard the doves fly up. They got a lot of hawks in the area that are preying on mice and stuff. There's rabbits in here. They see more squirrels. They see more wildlife in general once they stop mowing this driveway, and they save time and gas not mowing this little patch of yard. If we walk down the driveway here, you'll be able to see some of the areas that the deer are traveling on. There's trails through this, there's beds in it, and this year in particular, there was standing corn on the back side of all that grass. So the deer could come into this thing at night and they could browse around on the different vegetation. They could bed in the corn, they could bed in the tall grass. My parents would say almost every day this year when they went to work, there were does bedding on the driveway. That's a first. In the past, when this was mowed, they rarely bedded there every day. But this year it was very consistent, especially with the corn surrounding it, making you not able to see this little area from the road. So if you look back at the house there, you can see that the house is tucked into that patch of timber. And specifically right there is where those deer tend to bed. But if you look out into this grass, you can see there's some habitat diversity. There's a little bit of a food source diversity. You can see where the deer have been feeding on that clover. Kind of got it matted down in here. That's given them a place to browse because of the diversity in the diet, and it's given them a place to hide. They can come in here with the corn especially and just be completely hidden. So we're gonna walk down here now and I'll show you in the timber where these deer typically bed. Usually they'll bed with the corn at their back, right in this corner of the timber, looking at the house, making sure we're not coming out to shoot at them. But my dad runs a trail camera right here up on the driveway, facing down the driveway. And right at the beginning of November, he started getting pictures of big bucks going down the driveway. Also a lot of does coming down through here. So the trail camera is on that tree right there. And the deer bed right in this patch of timber right here. As you can see, once you're in the patch of timber, there's really not much to it. It's a little bit thicker right in this corner. The house is back in there. The grass right there adds a little diversity. Corn at their back makes them feel safe. And the house is up there. Another thing that I think really makes a big difference too is these down logs. A lot of time in this flat open wood, I feel like the deer really like to bed around down trees. I think that just sweetens this spot up just a little bit. So there's this little corner up here where we see deer, and the main point of coming up here is to show you the driveway and show you how that adds a little bit of diversity in an otherwise pretty bland area. There's nothing but crop fields and small woodlots, like I said. So I think it just adds a little bit of diversity, sweetens it up for the does. The big thing here is it's making a better doe bedding area. This isn't a big buck bedding area. The bucks don't bed here. We know where they bed. It's on different properties. But when the does are bedding here more frequently, makes the bucks come here more frequently, checking them, and eventually a buck will lock down with the doe in here or just be cruising through checking those does, making for an opportunity to hunt back in here. Alright, so I've got my dad with me, and we're just going to walk back to the back of the house, and he's going to tell us about his hunt on November 17th, right?
I think so.
So we're going to go back and talk about that, and I think it's pretty cool, because he shot a pretty big buck back in here. Alright, so we're walking back towards the house. And to put it into perspective, that's where those deer bed. It's not very far away, maybe like 75 or 80 yards from the house. Oh, there's a gunner. It's the one I shot back when I was 17. Shotgun, 20 gauge. And here's a view of that woodlot from the house right here. It's not very big. Now here's a view of the backyard. So pretty open timber right there. But again, that was all standing corn back in November. Alright, so tell us about what you did that day. Like, what was your plan? I guess, how did you get in there even? These are things I don't even know. So.
Sure. So I've been hunting it back there. Well, Connie, my wife, Zach's mom, said, we got that big buck on the camera. And I'd been hunting in eastern Ohio, and it always happens to come back and there's a buck around here that we never seen before. So, but we got this huge one on camera. She says, you need to hunt that buck every day and night till you get it. So you don't hear that from your wife too much. So that Friday night after work, Saturday morning, Saturday night, and Sunday morning I went out. And the first night I went out, I saw, I think I saw like, God, I'm starting to lose track. But I think during that weekend I saw 8 different bucks. And it was crazy. There were just so many deer. That corn was just holding them. it was perfect cover. I could get in and get out, and every deer basically would go through that corner through here, I think. And I have always hunted in a tree stand, and this year I started hunting outside the tree stand, and I've just had more fun doing it.
On the ground.
On the ground.
Said outside the tree stand.
Yeah, not with the tree stand, just on the ground. And I went back there and just found a nice little tree that has a curve on it, and I'd been hunting in it, and the deer were literally, the first day I got out there, I was not there 5 minutes, had a buck come out and stand in front of me. Didn't look the other way. Matter of fact, the night before that I shot the deer, the buck that I got, had a buck come in, and I know no one believes this, but he was 3 yards from me and never saw me. And I was in a ground, just a down tree.
Just a ground setup.
Just a ground setup.
Well, let's walk back there before we get
But how I got back that day, it was really cold and super loud, and I got right to here, and I'm like, I can't just walk back to the woods. It's going to be too noisy. So I ended up going down in the creek down there and just walked the creek all the way back. And it was still a little noisy, but 2 or 3 of the steps would be quiet in the water, and then I'd hit an icy spot, but it wasn't that continuous walking is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then right before I got to where I wanted to be, I literally ran the last 10 yards like a deer as loud as I could into my ground blind and just set up. And literally, I think the deer heard me.
Yeah.
Because in the dark, I could basically hear deer coming and running, and I just basically got in my ground blind then.
Well, let's go down here.
Okay.
Let's walk down and show everybody how actually small scale this all is. So you leave the
barn.
You leave the barn right here.
Yeah, literally. The corn's on. And we can't do this today, but I'll just show you. I just basically got in that little creek right there. It just has running water most of the year. Not always. Sometimes it's dry in the summer. And I just walked that way. Walking in it to be quiet.
Which way was the wind blowing?
That particular morning, when I got there, this is the weird part. I got really lucky. The wind was blowing this way, perfectly from the north east. And so I went back here thinking I was going to be setting up shooting sort of that way. But when I heard the buck coming through the corn, he came, and there wasn't a whole lot of wind. It was a very, very calm, crisp, cold morning. And he came through the corn grunting, and I could hear him coming from like 200 yards away. And it was still before daylight, so I wasn't going to, do anything. I didn't want to shoot. I don't like to shoot till it's like 10 minutes after daylight. And
because you can't see.
Because I can't see. Even, just my pins, I'm just not comfortable with it.
I can't either.
So I waited till probably 10 minutes after daylight, and I heard him back down here, and I was clear out at the point, which I'll show you in a minute. And I could hear him in this corn down here, or at least a deer. I thought, what the heck, this is my only chance. And then, weirdly enough, the wind switched. The little bit of wind there was, maybe 1 or 2 miles an hour, came. And I think the sun coming up made the wind change, and it started coming, instead of coming from the northeast, it started coming out of the northwest. Just perfect timing. So I got on the ground, or I was on the ground. I just started scraping the ground as loud as I could with my hands to make a little clearing to put my feet in, because I hadn't even done that yet.
Oh, it's calm and crunchy.
Calm and crunchy, so I didn't want to attract them before it was daylight. And I hit my grunt call twice, threw it on the ground, made another loud noise as loud as I could with the leaves, got my bow ready, and I looked, and I could hear him coming. And he was grunting and just tearing up the leaves. Those leaves were pushing around his rack, I think. And the corn's tight enough here that, their stalks are that close together in western Ohio. And he started coming, I could hear him coming, and when he came out of the corn, his ears were laid back, hair was up, and I knew he was coming. And I had already picked out a couple shooting lanes, and when he came up, he walked 2 or 3 yards inside the woods, stopped at 25 yards, put his head on that overhanging limb, and I was already at full draw by that time, and I shot him, right? I mean, it was just perfect. And I actually shot him, and it was really cold and crisp. He took off running out through the neighbor's property, and so I came back to the house. Your mom was in bed. And she's like, looks at me like, what are you doing back already? I mean, it's only been like a half hour after I left. And, or maybe 45 minutes at the most. And I'm like, she goes, what are you doing? I'm like, I just shot one. And she's like, no way, you got that big one? And I really didn't know, honestly. I knew it was a big deer when it was coming out of the corn. I don't like say, oh, it's the big one I'm looking for. I just knew I was going to shoot it the moment I saw it. Yeah. So I shot it. It took off, and as it ran away from me, I thought I could see the arrow sticking out the other side, but I wasn't sure. But I didn't look for blood or anything. It was so crisp, and I listened to see if I could hear him crash. Never heard him crash. Got her out of bed. We waited about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Called the neighbor to make sure they didn't care, and started tracking him. And she's unbelievable at tracking. She somehow can see the blood way better than me. Turns out I ended up hitting him through this lung, and it's kind of an angled on shot, but I did hit all the way through his right lung and came out the other side. And he went a lot farther than I wanted him to go. I'd say, what, about 250 yards?
Yeah.
But after maybe 45 minutes of tracking, we found him, and I got a little clip of that, but it's kind of funny because...
We'll drop that in there.
Yeah, because I thought that as soon as I saw him, I walked up, and she's taping or videoing me on her phone, and I walk up and I grab it, and I come around the tree, and I'm like, it's him! I'm like, it's the big one!
Yeah, well,
and,
it was.
Well, and I was pretty happy, and she's like, it's huge! And we're counting the points and everything, not really counting them, but like looking at it and talking and saying we should send the boys a text. And didn't realize till later. I get it back here, it's like 2 hours later. I got it back to the house. I'm sending my hunting buddies pictures, and my friend Rich, he says, Doug, you do know that's not the text back. That's not the same buck. And that's the only time I realized it wasn't the same buck. I mean, I didn't, I wasn't looking at it that.
Yeah.
The other buck that I saw was a different buck.
Yeah.
And another strange thing, my brother calls me. We go to eat breakfast then and get cleaned up, and he calls us, how many pointer is it? And I'm like, I even have a video of myself counting them. But I don't know. I had no idea. I had no idea how many points he was.
Yeah, I did the same
He's
thing.
a 10-pointer basically with 3 extras, but I never really counted them consciously, I think. You see me counting them. But I had no idea.
Kind of
no
blackout
idea.
moment.
Yeah.
This is the barn. Trying to keep everything into perspective here. Here's the barn. We walk out of the barn and you walk down this lane where it's like really pretty quiet.
Right here.
That's crazy, man. That trail was not there last year.
No, it was not here, but it was here. But what I did, I don't know, I probably didn't even tell you this. I took my pruners and made it so easy for them to walk. I don't see how nice it is now.
Yeah.
I took all the little trees down so that they didn't walk out there. I wanted them to walk through here on my property. Isn't that crazy? Just that little bit of difference made a big difference on where they walk. I mean, they never used to walk through here. I mean,
No.
occasionally there was a small deer trail through here.
There was. It was there last year, but not like that.
No, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
They walk right down through here and right around our building.
So, also to put it in perspective, house, building, and up there is where I was talking about those deer bedding. So this is their trail from that bedding area down through here. Up that trail Dad's walking on right now.
A couple years ago, there was a huge buck laying in here. Remember that when I told you I come around running out to the barn and it was really windy and nasty, and a buck and a doe jumped up and ran that way?
Yep.
Just was watching them, and all of a sudden I looked back and I was like, what's that buck doing? It's not running away. And here there was another buck standing in here that I never even saw, because my eyes were focused on the other one. Well, what I did then, I told you I walked down the creek, and I came in this creek right here, and you can see there's just a little bit of water. That day it was a little water and ice, but when I got to there, I was thinking, man, I'm gonna make a lot of noise getting to my blind, so I just kind of, it sounds silly, but I just went like that, and just like I was a deer, and literally I ran up to the blind. So I just came right in here, like I said, making a lot of noise. Like I was walking like a deer, and I just got down in here and waited because it was pretty dark. And all this was corn, and the neighbor had left a strip of corn out. And just as I got in there, I could hear a deer out in the corn grunting. And I'm like, man, I hope he doesn't come in. It's way too dark. It's not legal shooting, and I just don't feel comfortable shooting like I said before. So I waited. The sun come up. It was early morning, real nice and crisp, sunny. And it gets to be about 10 minutes after daylight, and I'd heard him go all the way, and I thought, well, he's long gone. All he went past my house. Well, nope, I heard grunting down in the corn and some more noise of deer thrashing. So I thought, well, this is my chance. And I hadn't even taken the time, because it was so noisy, so I literally did this. I went on my pack here, had my grunt call on top of it, had my bow and arrow ready laying up here. I just literally went like this. And got all the leaves out. I blew my grunt call twice, threw it down, did a little more, as loud as I could, grabbed my bow, turned around, got like this, and just waited. And I mean, literally within a couple of minutes, I heard the corn moving in the corn and grunting, and I could see clear back, about, I don't know, 80 yards, 70 yards back there. There's a little pine, and a little bit past that, there's a little drainage. And he come out of that drainage right down there. And I could tell right away he was worked up. He had ears back and hair was up. Had my binoculars on top of my bow, and I could see him. As soon as I saw he was a shooter, I put my binoculars down. And if you can see, there's a perfect place to draw. I'd already range found everything, and then he comes walking right up through there. As soon as he gets behind those dead trees, I drew back. And right when he gets to about that open, and he stops and puts his head in the overhanging limb, I shot, and he sprinted all the way back through out of here, and I thought I could see an arrow sticking out of him. And as I said, Connie came out and helped me track him a couple hours later, and we found him on the neighbors about 250 yards back. He went a long way, but it was a really fun hunt. And you know, Zach and Logan, our other son, have both convinced Connie and I to not mow the driveway. And man, ever since we've done that, it's been crazy. Like, we've always had deer here, but instead of our little property holding a deer and a doe and a fawn maybe, now this year we had 6 to 9 deer all summer bedding in our driveway. It's fun to watch them stand up and go out in the morning. And then as soon as November came, just like usually happens, the bucks end up showing up. But this year, there were so many more does and so many more bucks. And I really think it just comes down to more bedding area. They just feel comfortable.
And habitat diversity, right?
Diversity,
it's just like
yeah.
I was saying earlier, I think one of the big things about this area is it's, you know, the woodlots even themselves, they just have nothing in them.
Right.
I mean, you can see this forest. It's Silver Maple City in here. And I mean,
Right.
there's nothing but, there's honestly barely any other tree but silver
and
maple.
every tree line, every fence line's completely cleared down for miles around here.
Small
and anything you can do to make it just a little thicker, a little different. You know, I don't care if it would be pine trees or just high grass, or just don't mow your grass. And you know, now, you know, we mow our grass around our house, but we were mowing 10, 15 yards on each side of the driveway, and I mean, it really probably tripled our habitat.
Well, and just simply the expense of, I mean, I know it's not much, but
I don't have to mow the grass anymore.
Right, yeah.
I'm down to maybe from a 2.5 hour mowing the grass down to 45 minutes.
Which saves you time, which saves you life, you know?
Right. I got some other ideas that I'm thinking about doing up here. I can show you on that, but we have like a low spot in the yard that we've always mowed. It's always a problem because you can, tractor gets stuck and it looks bad. I'm just gonna let it grow up. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really pumped about this buck because shooting it off the ground, it was really pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I hunted pretty much off the ground this year. Actually, funny part was my buddy kept trying to talk me into putting the tree stand up. You got to put the tree stand up. You got to put the tree stand up. And I don't think I would have got him if I'd have been in a tree, because the shooting was perfect.
Yeah.
You know, everything was perfect. So.
Well, good deal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's an awesome buck.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And hopefully, if you guys have a small property and you have deer around it and you can find little ways to tweak it like Dad has done in this situation, maybe you'll have a cool opportunity like he did.
Good luck, guys.
Good deal.